Hello everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at logistic regression. Now, before we actually begin this lesson, I do want to briefly state that as with many of the lessons in this course, I'm only going to be scratching the surface because we're going to be looking at the computational side of stuff. Logistic regression and generalized linear models in themselves are actually a much deeper topic. In fact, I've taught an entire course on this called categorical data analysis, and anyone who is one of my students and sees that class available, it really is interesting and it uses a lot of R and learning all this kind of stuff. So if you're interested, I just wanted to kind of start by saying that. So let's start now by introducing logistic regression. So today we're going to explore the concepts of logistical regression, a fundamental and analytic tool in statistics and machine learning for solving classification problems. Unlike linear regression, which will predict a continuous outcome, logistic regression is going to be used for binary classification tasks where the outcome is categorical. Now, I will actually preface this by saying that you do get an output, which is a continuous output or outcome, just like you would with linear regression. The difference is that you are actually going to have a cutoff point. Anything below this point, it will count as 0. Anything above this point, we will count as 1. And this is actually a factor you may have to take into account when you're doing a logistic regression, not just whether you want to classify it as 0 or 1, but also where is that cutoff point for the classification change. So let's look at understanding it now. Logistic regression is a statistical method for predicting binary classes. The outcome or target variable is dichotomous in nature. This means there are only two possible classes. For example, it can be used to classify if an email is spam or not spam. Or the example they use whenever you're learning about machine learning is spam or ham. Or if you have a tumor that is either malignant or benign. So why not just use linear regression? So while linear regression might seem like an appropriate choice for binary outcome, right, 0 or 1, it has significant drawback. It is that it can predict values that are below 0 or above 1, which are not possibilities, right? Because you have to think of these like probabilities. Logistic regression, on the other hand, ensures that the predictions are within our range of 0, 1, since, again, as I mentioned, they're probabilities. In fact, I'll look at graphing this at the end where you'll see that we get what's called an S-curve or a sigmoid curve, which actually will show the shape of the actual graph and where that cutoff is based on your logistic regression model. And let's actually look at this sigmoid function to begin with. So a logistic regression model uses a logistic function as part of the generalized linear model to squeeze the output of a linear equation between 0 and 1. And the logistic function is known as a sigmoid function. So the logistic model that we use is structured around this logistic function. That is to say, the probability that our output y is equal to 1 is equal to 1 over 1 plus the exponential, so e to the beta 0 plus beta 1 x1 plus so on and so forth up to beta n xn, where the probability y equals 1 is the probability that y will equal to whatever your class 1 is. The beta values are the coefficients associated with each of those variables you have. E is our base of our natural logarithm, and x1 through xn are our independent variables. The coefficients, or beta, of the logistic regression algorithm must be estimated from the training data. This is typically done through maximum likelihood estimation. Again, another thing in a class that I teach is if you take mathematical statistics, we have a good chunk of it focused on maximum likelihood estimation. And I actually do plan on doing videos on that, stuff like that. But again, this refers to a bunch of other stuff that I've taught elsewhere. Then we have our odds ratio. So in logistic regression, we often talk about the odds ratio, which is the odds of an event happening versus not happening. The odds are calculated as the ratio of the probability of success to the probability of failure. So once you figured out those probabilities, you can actually figure out what the odds ratio are for each of these outcomes. So how do we actually do logistic regression in R? So it estimates the probability that a given input point belongs to a certain class, then making it suitable for a binary classification problem. We're going to use the GLM for Generalized Linear Model function. Our syntax will be that we'll use GLM, and then we'll have our formula, which follows the same exact rules and functions of our linear models lesson. Our data that we're going to be using, and then family. This is where you can dive deeper into generalized linear models, and you could pick different families such as binary, Poisson, things like that. So we're going to need a couple things. First, we're going to need our formula. This is going to be our symbolic description of our model to be fitted. We already know how to do that. The data, this is optional data frame containing the variables of the model. It's optional because, as you've seen before, you can use the money sign. You can actually refer to where the data is coming from and kind of skip that data phase if you want. And then the family is going to be a description of the error distribution and link function to be used in the model. If you want to learn more about link functions, I do highly suggest you dive deeper into categorical data analysis. So now let's do an example. So as always, I'm going to start by setting a seed, in this case, of 1, 2, 3, so that if you want to follow along, you'll get the exact same results. So we're going to start by setting our seed, and we have data. We're going to create a data frame where we have y, x1, and x2. So we have two variables that we're going to describe our output y. So y is just going to be a sample, 0 to 1, with a size of 100 and replace equals true. So we're just going to randomly select 0 or 1. We're assigning the group that they are a part of. X1 is going to be from a normal distribution with a mean of 200 and a standard deviation of 50, and we'll get 100 X1 values. X2, we're going to again sample 0 to 1 of size 100 with replace equals true. This would be our categorical variable. Now, if we look at our data, let's see what it actually looks like. We have 100 data points, and you can see that for each of our y values, we either have a 1 or a 0. We have some x value from a normal distribution, and then we have some categorical factor, which would be our x2. Now, in order to model our GLM, we're going to use GLM. We're going to have y is modeled by x1 plus x2. Family equals binomial, and data equals data, right? Because again, this is bad naming convention. I should have put something like my data, but I wasn't really thinking about it when I did the code. So now if we do our summary of our model, you're going to see the output that we get. First, it's going to do call, which is going to tell us the formula that we used, including our family and link function. We have our coefficients, just like you would with a linear regression. We're going to have our intercept, x1 and x2, and our estimates. You're going to have the standard error, you're going to have their z value, and you're going to have your p value, which of course none of our p values are good here for rejecting our null hypothesis, but that's fine. It's just for an example, and it's made up data. Under this, you're going to have your dispersion parameter for binomial family taken to be 1. You're going to have null deviance and residual deviance and their degrees of freedom. And then the AIC. These are for fitting models, because a lot of times you're going to be creating models where you might want to have a lot of variables. And there's two ways you can kind of do it. You can start with no variables and then add 1, and you'll get what the deviance is from the null model or the full model, depending on which one you want to do. And then you can see which variable causes it to give you the best model. Then you can try adding a second variable, try each of them, figure out which second variable gives you the best model. And you can do this up to some point where your deviance stops getting better. The AIC, as I kind of mentioned previously, is a measure of a model's performance by how well does it model the whatever y variable you have using the x variables, while also keeping complexity low. So you want a low AIC because higher means that you have a more complex model. And then last thing it's going to give us is the number of Fisher scoring iterations, which would be 4. So looking at our output of our summary model will provide some insight into the significance of our predictors and the overall model fit, which of course this one did not fit well because again, it's just completely made up random data. Now let's look at how would you actually make predictions based on this. Let's say that you did get a good model, had a good fitting, and you wanted to take some new data and predict where it would classify those inputs. So what we're going to do is we are now going to create some new data, which is going to be x1 is going to be the values 120, 205, 290, 150, and 240. X2 is going to be the categorical variables 0, 1, 1, 0, 1. So now we have our new data. We can look at our data frame right here, and you can see right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our probabilities. We're going to use the predict function, which is going to use our model that we modeled creating our logistic regression, and then our new data, which is going to be this right here. Our type is going to be response. So if we do this, I'm just going to look at it real quick. Our probabilities would be, you'll notice that for each one, we get a probability. Remember how I told you that it is technically a continuum, it's just between 0 and 1. Each of these represent a probability of it's being classified as 1. So the first one is 0.3899, second one is 0.488, third one is 0.48, 0.388, and 0.486. So doing this, then we can do our predicted classes where we're going to use an if-else statement. Our probabilities, if they are greater than 0.5, we will classify them as 1. Otherwise, they'll be classified as 0. We'll combine those together, and then we can print our results. For our new data, each of these was predicted to be part of class 0. Let's say, instead, though, I decided to change my cutoff to 0.45. So in this case, doing the same thing, what's going to happen now is the first input is going to be classified as 0. The second input and third input will be classified as class 1. The fourth input would be classified as 0, and the fifth input would be classified as class 1 again. So this is what I was kind of talking about, is not only are you getting your predicted probabilities based on your actual analysis that you're doing, you may actually want to have some different cutoff for where you consider it becomes high enough probability that you would consider it class 1, right? You might want to be more conservative and err towards classifying 1, or you may want to have a higher threshold where you're less likely to classify as 1. As per usual, now that we've done our generic made-up data example, we're going to do another example using the mtcars tried and trusty data that we have. So in this example, we're going to load our mtcars data, and I'm going to set mtcars AM, this is our automatic or manual transmission of our cars, as a factor of mtcars AM, where levels are going to be 0 or 1, and our labels will be automatic or manual. So all we're doing is, instead of it just being 0, 1, we're actually putting a factor with it. So looking at mtcars AM, it is now going to say manual or automatic. Actually, let's go back real quick. Let's reload the data. You'll see originally it was 0, 1. So all we did was we just replaced it with manual or automatic. Now we're going to create our model, which is going to be a generalized linear model, so GLM, where automatic or manual is modeled by miles per gallon interacting with weight. Remember, so using our syntax from our formulas, that means we're going to be looking at miles per gallon, we're going to be looking at weight, and we're going to be looking at miles per gallon interacting with weight. Our data is coming from mtcars, and again, our family is binomial. So we're going to create our model, and this will be model 2. Let's get our summary. So you can see here, again, none of these are significant. And our AIC, though, a lot lower than our previous model. So if we had done something simpler, let's say we switch this up to, instead of being the interaction, we just do the miles per gallon and the weight modeling it. You'll see here that now our intercept is significant up to a 0.05 level. Our weight is significant up to a 0.05 level. Our miles per gallon is not significant, and our AIC is actually lower. So I'm going to go back now and I'm going to change this for our predictions. So I'm going to put this back to star and then run it again. Okay, now we're going to do predictions where we're going to predict model 1 type equals response. And let's see what our predictions are for this data. So for each of these cars, I put them back into the model, which is actually a bad practice. You should have new data you've never used, but I'm just doing this to kind of make the example. Each of these then will get a probability associated with them, whether they're going to be an automatic or a manual transmission car. And then I'm going to create a confusion matrix or a table to determine how well the classification was done. So what we'll do is we will take our predict, which is this. If else predictions were greater than 0.5, we will say that it was manual. Otherwise, we will say it was automatic. And then we will compare that to the actual results from mtcars. And this will give us what is called a confusion matrix, which shows us that. So here on the left side, we have our predictions, automatic or manual. At the top, we have our actual results of those cars, automatic or manual. So this means that when our model predicted it was an automatic transmission, it got 18 of them correct. When it predicted automatic, it got one of them incorrect by saying it was automatic, but it was actually a manual. When we predicted that it was a manual transmission, we got one incorrect but it was actually an automatic transmission, and we got 12 correct by correctly saying it was manual transmission, and it actually was a manual transmission. Once you have done this confusion matrix, this is actually a lot of times how we're going to determine how good a classification algorithm is. Because what we'll do is we'll be able to look at things like its positive predictive rate, its accuracy, its precision. These are all things that are part of our confusion matrices calculation. And I actually plan on doing a mini lesson on that with that, what are called ROC curves and area under the curve, AUC, and stuff like that. The last thing I kind of wanted to do then is I wanted to show you a visual of what this actually looks like. So we're going to use the package visreg to do this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do visreg. I'm going to take my model 1, which is the model we just did earlier, and then I'm going to do miles per gallon and scale equals response. So if we run this, you can see our sigmoid curve right here. Notice that our y-axis for automatic or manual is a continuum from 0 to 1, right? This is what I was talking about. It is actually, you do get a probability involved. And this curve represents where our actual values are. So this means that if I have a car with miles per gallon that was at 25, then it would be here on the line, and I could go over and I would get a probability of like 0.86. If I have a value that's, let's say, right here at 23 miles per gallon, I would go up to the line and I would get a probability of, let's say, 0.3. And this is how you actually get those probabilities. Use the sigmoid curve, this S curve, which based on whatever your X value is, it can then give you an associated probability with it. And that's what changes whenever you're making these logistic regressions. You might have an S curve that's really slow slope, or you might have one like this where it kind of is basically 0 and then almost instantly jumps up. So this one has a pretty hard cutoff, but you might have one which is much more gradual. When I'm picking my cutoff point, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm saying, okay, anything above this value would be 0, anything below this value would be 0, anything above would be predicted as 1. In this case, I did 0.5, so it's going to be anything above this value is going to be 1, and anything that's below it would be predicted as 0. So that's going to be it for looking at logistic regression in R. I know, again, we didn't dive super deep into it. I just wanted to introduce the actual how to implement a logistic regression in R. If you want to dive deeper into different families and different link functions, things like that, there's quite a bit to it, and R is able to do all of that. You can see that overall, though, the actual modeling follows the same syntax we've been using since we did linear regression. And pretty much everything in R will. So once you have a strong understanding of how to write the syntax of models in R, whatever method you're using, whether it be ANOVA, logistic regression, ridge regression, support vector machine, it's all going to follow that same syntax. So you have these basic tools that you can use for almost anything. And logistic regression is a very strong tool to understand because it's very strong for binary classification. In this modern era of superbly complex and advanced methods of machine learning and statistical learning, logistic regression still consistently does really well for this one thing, for binary classification. And you can actually take it even further. If you wanted to do some sort of grouping classification, you could almost create a system of logistic regressions. So just know that I wanted to introduce this topic, show you how to do it in R, show you the similarities to what you've already been doing, and just kind of introduce you to another strong tool to have in your toolkit. Thank you for watching. To continue learning, click the linked video here for the next lesson. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.